Welcome, our Bridging the Gap family. Andrew Nicastro here with my little family in here, Brother Dave,
Really?
Sister V.
We're little?
I mean, you've lost a little
I'm a
weight.
sister.
Yeah. Sister from another mist. I've been using that a lot lately. Yeah. Thank you all for joining us again, and welcome to Bridging the Gap, where our mission is to quiet the stigma of PTS and mental illness that veterans walk through every single day. And we do that through relationship building, storytelling, and education. David here did his testimony in week number 2, or month number 2, I should say. So go and check out Brother Dave's testimony.
3.
Was it 3?
Episode number 3.
I don't even know what we did in episode 2
Yeah,
then.
I remember my own testimony, number 3. Do you remember your number?
Oh, yeah. What's your number?
7 or 8?
Yep.
What was I? Number
7.
13? 14?
I don't know.
That was a very important one. Go check out that
They're
one.
all important.
And Brother Dave's going to remind us of the calls to action
Yes.
here really quickly.
And Angus is going to put it up there. The vet crisis line is the most important, I feel, because whatever your crisis is, veterans, you can dial 988, then press 1. If you don't want to dial anything, you can text, or there's an online chat. Whatever it is, you are not meant to hurt yourself. You are not meant to take your life. You're meant to expose it, bring it out into the light, and tell someone, and that's what that's there for. Here in the North Shore and other areas, you have the you have V and the VSO over there at 12 Emerson Ave, and you get the phone number there. We have multiple retreats coming up, one in Florida in early October, and then another one in November in upstate New York. So Bridging the Gap Vets Podcast at gmail.com.
Yep.
Andrew's working on making that smaller somehow. If you want to go to a retreat, it is totally free, and there's a lot of healing, and it's beautiful. It helped in my my walk. So. Yeah.
And this month is a very special month because, like we talked about in the beginning, right? The storytelling is all factual stories. It's veterans coming in here and telling us their experiences. Civilians, whether they're mothers of veterans or siblings
Different
of veterans,
perspectives.
Yeah.
coming in telling their perspectives. This month, we're going to talk about a story of a veteran going overseas, but not with a gun.
Right.
Not with bulletproof armor or bulletproof vests or
Yeah.
Going overseas again.
In a war zone, flipped upside down and having none of the security that you once had. No bullet bouncers, no pistol, no rifle, no helmet.
So everything
support.
that this person was previously trained on, you
Right.
just strip it all off.
Everything we thought strength meant and protection, going into a war zone with none of that for a different mission.
So
That's what the story is.
Who's our guest this month?
Well, as everyone could see, we did the wide camera shot. There's no other guests. Brother Dave,
Yeah.
you went on a mission. It was a very different kind of mission, wasn't
Yeah.
it?
I was in Israel in May. This is after October 7th, and it is an absolute war zone, the whole place. There are some places safer than others, but the whole place is a war zone. And I was invited over there by an Israeli man who was 25 years in the intelligence service, 504th. And he wanted to invite specifically Christians to come over and see what's happening because he feels they have a lot of enemies. The media is showing a certain agenda. People of the world are getting jaded and fed something. And he said, we're running out of friends, and I feel like you people can be our friends. So he wanted to show us the grounds, meet people, and hear intelligence from their perspective and their side on the ground. And that's what my mission was.
Why Christians in particular?
In his testimony, when he was serving on the Syrian border as a commander, he was a lieutenant colonel. When Iran went into Syria and there was a civil war and Iran was putting their tentacles into Syria, he watched a lot of refugees come bloodied, hungry, and come to the fence. He walked up and said, "Who are you?" They told him, and he found out there was a civil war happening. When he went to the hierarchy of Israel, they're a very small country. They can't do much with refugees. They tasked him with going to find the help. He went to America, and the only people that were willing to help were Christians. He looked at them because he doesn't trust. Goes, "Are you going to convert them?" They go, "We want to feed them. We want to bandage their wounds. We want to help." He watched them. He was their translator as they went through the borders, and he said they did exactly that, and I now have a bond, and I trust them. Israel is surrounded by a lot of countries that want them wiped off the face of the map, and he noticed that this people group called Christians were not them, so he trusts them because that proved it. Us coming over as the 8 were to prove and show something else, and he invited 8 people from America all over the country from Hawaii, Texas, California, Alabama, Wyoming, Missouri, just all over. And we came.
And how did you even catch wind of this? How did
Yeah.
this introduction even?
Yeah. In my life change of leaving the state police and healing from my mental wounds, the spiritual journey is what I really connected with. And I went to a summit last year in Dallas in July, and he got up and spoke for 10 minutes at this Christian summit, and said, I would like to connect with Christians, and if you'd like to come to Israel. At that time, there wasn't a war. I'm sure there was a lot of people. When October 7th happened, that door and that window closed. He contacted us in May and April and said, it's getting worse. We really would like you to come over. You 8 specifically, he chose 8, because we need these friends. It looks like we're losing friends. And we bought the tickets and went.
Are all 8 of you from this summit as well? Did the
No.
other 7 come from the summit?
I would say half of us. The other half, people who heard it thought of them. I think this would be up your alley. One guy, he left the fire department and plants seeds and food in difficult soils, and he goes to Iraq and Kurdistan and teaches them to do the same. There's one man who's a medic who traveled into Ukraine during the war to help bandage the wounds there. Each of us have different skill sets. I am the only active duty veteran that served in a war zone besides Marco. The rest are civilians. So they weren't even veterans, and they were choosing to go into a war zone to help. So it was very different, the dynamic and the testimony of each person is very dynamic and different.
And how about, and this is, as a family member that knows a little bit, but how was talking to family when you were like, hey guys, I'm thinking about going to Israel?
Right.
Wow, that's a good question for them. When I had presented it, it was difficult for them. I felt like I could see the triggering in their eyes back to the old war guy and the old time that I used to go. I believe where I really wanted to care the most, not that I didn't care, was with my 3 children. I have 3 children, and they're old enough to understand. My 2 oldest took it the hardest. They cried. They go, Daddy, you can die at war. And I guess I had to really reflect on that, and I talked to them, you're right. But the way I'm raising you is if something happens to me, it's not it. It's not the end. There's something else that I'm going to. And that's what
have a
you're
greater
being
cause.
raised. Yeah. And that's what I said to him. And he understood that, but it still hurt. My daughter, I just let her cry in my arms
Oh, that's so heartbreaking.
because you just have to grieve through the process of I'm going into a war zone. It's something bigger and greater. Isn't it just the military call too?
Right.
It's
Yeah.
the red, white, and blue. It's something bigger and
It
greater.
is. It's patriotism, and
Yeah.
it's doing something for the greater cause.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess I'm just scared for you, or I was scared for you. I know when you first presented it to us and you told us, and I kind of just looked at you like, "Are you nuts? What is wrong with you? What are you doing there?
Right.
Because you're going in there unarmed. You have no defense mechanisms. You have no specialized training. You're just
Right.
going in, boots on ground,
Yep.
just to look in."
That's right. Every
so to
veteran
speak.
reacts like that I talked to. One recently. So did you carry a gun? Did you have a vest? Like nothing. He goes, I
Yeah.
can send you my vest.
Right.
Like
I got some
that's
equipment.
Correct. Like our mind goes to that first.
Wow.
It really does. I got to be honest, I don't want to carry a gun, but a lot of them challenge me with like, what if the October 7th happens again? And what makes you think you won't snap or change? And I go, you're right. I don't know. I was triggered over there, and we'll get to that later. But I just want to say that this is take 2, by the way.
Oh yeah.
We tried this
Sorry, guys.
a few weeks ago, and an error came on the screen behind the
Never
curtain
seen
that
before.
we've never seen. And we got through half an episode, and it got stuck and erased. So we're
So
trying
take
this
2.
again, and we're hoping we can get the message of my story through it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So this is a good start to it because we didn't do this last time.
No,
so.
we did not do
Yeah,
this. So yeah, we
This
got
feels
a
a lot
little
more
bit,
natural.
Right.
different insight. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. But I do have some videos which are going
Right.
to guide the process and the structure of this whole trip. So this is the start of it all. This is the airport, and I want to highlight how much they love their people and their hostages. And I believe right now, as of today, there's 101 left, and it's doing the automatic thing
know.
again. So we can pause it here. So I get off the plane, and all you see is the picture of hostages everywhere. Their like we are nationalistic, or at least we were, like a pride for our country. They
Yes.
do too.
Yeah.
They're very similar where they have that pride for their people. And remember, we had a 9/11.
I was just gonna say
That's right.
that's what I was reflecting on when I saw
right.
that photo.
The 9/11 took down our towers, and they got us on our homeland. So it's time to defend. And we went into Iraq and Afghanistan. It was 2 wars. And they wanted to highlight, as we started to talk to them, our 9/11 happened on October 7th in our own homeland. People came in, and this is us defending ourselves. And each one wanted to make that clear. Again, I was on the ground hearing the stories of the people. And I got to be honest, I don't know any of the hostages personally, but when you see their faces and names all over the country, I went to, this is just the airport in Tel Aviv, and then I went into a park in Tel Aviv. The same photos were there. They're all over the country. You get to know the faces of the hostages and the names. They're all over the place. So I just wanted to highlight, as you get off a plane, it's there.
It's kind of like a second home, right? We do the same thing. When a major event happens in our own backyard, this is what we do. We post photos of our loved ones everywhere. 9/11 happened.
right.
Any mass shootings that occur, we post their pictures
We
everywhere.
memorialize
Yeah.
and nationalize.
Yeah.
We want people to know what's
We
happening.
want people to know what's happening. And it's almost like you stepped off the airplane and you're in a different country, but are you? Because they're doing the same exact thing
Right.
and showing their love for their people.
Right.
As you got off the plane, could you feel that there was like a heaviness
No.
as you walked by these pictures, or
No, it was a sadness. The heaviness.
Sadness.
Israel is a very interesting people. They're so proud and so nationalistic, and they've thousands of years. Remember, we're hundreds of years old.
Right.
They're thousands of years old, and they are very proud people that are fighters. That's something I definitely recognized in the people themselves. Very well trained is all of them, by the way. In our country, you won't see commercials on how to deal with backpacks that are left alone in an airport. They're trained by their commercials and everything how to handle this stuff because they deal with enemies all over the place.
so much?
So we'll see beer commercials and car commercials and medication commercials. They have different commercials helping train. And all of the men do 3 years in the military, and all of the women do too. They're all trained at every age. They're all military trained, except for the ultra-Orthodox religious who don't have to serve. Everybody has to serve. Very well-trained country. So something I also wanted to highlight.
Food for thought.
Yeah. The next picture is to highlight the West Bank. So this is a major highway that I'm on from the airport in Tel Aviv, and I'm going to the home in the north where I'll be staying. It's high walls. It's concertina wire on the top. And the West Bank is, you got Gaza Strip, which is Palestinian, and then you got West Bank, which is majority Palestinian. Approximately 2.7 to 3 million Palestinians live behind these walls. Me and V saw in Iraq high T walls, concertina wire. It denotes separation and war.
Concertina is barbed wire.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's barbed wire is, concertina is razor blades on the top. Barbed wire is not razor. It's like three-prong little hooks.
Little hooks.
So it is slightly different.
Okay.
So, but you can call it barbed wire. Yeah.
Sure.
But it's razor wire at the top. So it's to denote what? It's been there for a while. Like it's to denote a separation in people and that there's conflict. And the next photo is going to show how big the West Bank is. Andrew's going to blow this up. I'm the little blue dot. You can see Gaza Strip there, Rafah, kind of the lower left. Israel is not big. It's the size of New Jersey. Look at the dotted lines in West Bank. You see Jerusalem, Old Town Jerusalem. The West Bank is huge. And 2.7 to 3 million Palestinians live there with very few Jews, but it's a large population. And then you see Gaza's the other dotted. That's the other population where most of the war is happening right now with Hamas. So just wanted to know as you see the size of Israel. You're going to see a map point. I was taking screenshots and points of where I am. The next is the Golan Heights where I lived. So Andrew's going to blow that up. Just to the north and to the west is Sidon, Tyre, Beirut. It's Lebanon. That's where Hezbollah is. That's the biggest terrorist military in the world besides Iran. And that's where they are, is constant bombing by Hezbollah into Israel in the north. I'm in what's called a triangle because I'm surrounded by Damascus, is Syria just to the right. Syria is huge. The size of Israel, they're the size of New Jersey, surrounded by huge countries. So the Golan Heights is the north. It's very heavily bombed by Hezbollah. And their worry is that what Hamas did on October 7th, Hezbollah can do at any moment in the north as well. What's keeping them from doing it? I heard the U.S. carrier groups that are out there right now in the waters, the pressure by NATO. Why haven't they do it? They listen to Iran. Iran is at the head, and they have the Houthis in Yemen. They have Hamas down south, Hezbollah in the north, and they have factions in Iraq and a bunch of different elements that are doing their bidding all over the country. So if Iran gives the okay at any point, they can open up multiple fronts where they will come in. But something's keeping them from coming in right now. But every day, there's constant bombings. Like in Iraq in the Green Zone, every day, 10 to 15 to 20 rounds, we were waiting for of RPG and artillery into the Green Zone. We're waiting for it. Same thing there. They're waiting for it all day long. So these alerts on your phone and the surrounding sirens alert you to incoming, where you have a certain time frame to get to cover. Okay, so that was Golan Heights in the north. The next will be the team that went. Marco's got the brown pants, white shirt. He's Israeli. He's the one who invited us, and we came from all over the country. A few of them in this picture are living in the black site in the Golan Heights already, just living in Israel doing the work. And then the rest of us came in for the 2 weeks to partake in this trip. All right, this is a video, and I'm going to have you pause it when you see up close that mosque, Andrew. Pause it there. Okay, that is, we're in Israeli territory. In the middle of the photo, you can kind of see a fence. And then now you're looking at this is the Syrian border. This is how close it is, and it's separated by fence line. Wow. There are fence line all over this country separating Lebanon, Syria, because of the war zones. So we're looking into, on the front lines of Syria right in front of us. This is how close it is. There's a mosque. There's Muslims practicing Islam, and then Judaism is on the other side. It's Israel. And there was an active out-duty army post right there. That's how close it is everywhere you go. I was so humbled, but where in the world do civilians get access to war zones going right to the edge? A civilian can't walk into Afghanistan and Iraq during our wars and do this. Marco provides an unprecedented access to these places to give intelligence and walk you in. Just pretty amazing. The next video, and we're just going to let it run a little bit. There was an attack about a little over a month ago into a Druze village. Druze are Arabs, by the way, who live in Israel. They'll make their home wherever they're allowed to go, kind of like nomads. And Hezbollah bombed this Druze village, and it hit a soccer field, killing, I believe, 12 children. And one of them was Marco's friend, lost an 11-year-old daughter. And Marco is pointing out the double fence, that here we are once again on the Syrian border, and he's explaining it. Then the attack comes, and Marco let us know that same Druze village we were in just got bombed by Hezbollah and killed a lot of children. So we can pause it there. Just highlights how when I come home, when veterans come home from war, there's still things happening on the same grounds we walked, and people are affected. Like Marco is a friend of mine. So when I hear his friend lost a daughter, I'm meant to receive that information and have compassion and empathy for Marco, this man, and every child that died on that soccer field. And it was big because Druze village is small, very small population. It's a big deal when your soccer field gets bombed. And Hezbollah is very precise. When they send bombs, and I'm going to show you how precise they are pretty soon, they know what they're bombing. They know where they're going. The precision-guided missiles, and so they know what they're doing.
They're purposely attacking these children.
Correct.
These innocent people.
How do you hurt us the most? You take our children.
You take what we treasure the most.
And it's our children. So, and where I had mentioned the hostages, that's Israel's children. The Jewish population, their nation, these are our children. These are our hostages. That's kind of the mentality over there.
Is there any explanation for why they have such advanced technology?
Yeah, Iran again is the head of this whole thing, and they have money like you wouldn't believe, and they've put those arms out there to these proxy forces, which they call proxy. They stand in the gap and do the work of this country way over here on the other side of Iraq, on the middle of the Middle East. So they have to get closer. How do they get closer? By inputting their military and these forces closer to that country to do their bidding. That's what proxy is. And a lot of governments in a lot of countries do proxy wars.
Sure.
You know, most of our wars can be done by proxy. So
I did not know that.
yeah, very interesting intelligence there. So this is one of those precise missiles. We can run the whole thing. It's only 32 seconds, but this is a Hezbollah missile that hit a car, hit a downtown civilian area. You're going to see it go up, and it hit. We're pointing at it. It's hitting buildings. Just this missile just blew up this residential area, and wanted to highlight. There it is hitting a house. The shrapnel that comes from missiles just spreads all over, and this is a civilian area. And just look what it did with this car, burnt it up.
There's still people living in that area.
Yeah, Kiryat Shimona is the size of, say, Gloucester. And originally 26,000 people lived there. Because of the constant bombing on this northern city by Hezbollah, 24,000 have left and become refugees in Israel. They moved to Tel Aviv and all over the country where it can be safe. 2,000 had stayed, and that's mostly the elderly and the people that say, I just don't want to leave. So they live under constant sirens incoming by Hezbollah, kind of rolling the dice on your life.
Wow.
And that's what this city represents. The commander who's walking us around, we met with him, and he just shared, you know, I was an assistant principal on October 6th. When October 7th came, I became activated, and now I'm a commander of this area in the north. And he wanted to show us what he's going through and what they're going through and how tired he is and how he can't see his family. And it's, imagine being an assistant principal.
I was just thinking
You get activated. And I remember looking at him. He was disheveled. He was tired. He was beat up. And he goes, I've been at war at that point for 7 or 8 months. I just want to see my family again. And it doesn't look like there's an end. Could there be an end to Hamas? It's a smaller organization. What Hezbollah is doing in the north, they're, again, a military organization that is terror, whereas Hamas is a terror organization, very small. Hezbollah is a military. And they're foreseeing, even if our 24,000 people come back to this city, they will never feel safe with this military organization in the north. They constantly bomb us, and they're accurate. How would they ever feel safe? Unless there's a peace agreement, and they struggle to believe they trust any peace agreement with them. Or we have to go and invade the north too, and that's big and dangerous. So that was the kind of conversation there. The next one is, well, I'm not a very good cameraman, but we're going to be going into a home, and our amazing. You're going to see the man who took us around, the deputy security officer who walked us around, and he was the commander showing us. This is a precision. Actually, this was an artillery round, so artillery is not even that precision. But when you see the hole, it goes in through the side of this house. This is that round directly going in, and he's explaining that. And so it's direct. It went right in. And usually with, you know, it was a lucky shot. If it's a precision-guided missile, that's different, but this was not. Watch what a round does when it gets inside a home. And this is also what they're dealing with. Immediately gets inside, and it causes fire and flame and disaster. The whole home is devastated. And who wants to live in a place like this where this is happening daily? Daily. That's where it went into. Okay, that's the room it hit. But as you walk through the rest of the house, as I'm going to show you, that is the same all over this house. Every room is fire, devastation, rubble, explosion. Would you want to live in a place like this? So again, most of the people have left this town and are refugees all over the place. Wow. All right. The next one is probably the most that was supposed to hit hardest to home, because Ariel brought us and goes, I wanted to show you this one last. And he goes, of the 3, this was his question, which one do you think was the worst? It didn't cause the most damage. What he wanted to show us was this is a kindergarten. So kids, right? You see the play stuff, playground. And this round was precision. So now we're looking at a missile. There's the shrapnel from it on the wall. And the actual explosion was right there in the center of the kindergarten. There's the group. Again, I'm not a good cameraman like Andrew. Directly into the middle. Hezbollah wants to tell you You will not send your kids back to school. You will not have life get back to normal because at any point we'll do this. Guess what? They did it because I just showed you they did it in the Druze village on a soccer field. They constantly prove if you try to send your kids out there to get back to life, we will drop this because we know where you're at and what's happening. It's terrifying for them.
Yeah.
They're living constant hypervigilance, terrified. That's a kindergarten.
That's crazy.
That was the biggest one because I have 3 kids that hit home to me.
Yeah, as
It
a
hits
mom,
them.
that's the one that hits me the hardest, right? And I know we've spoken about this off camera, but what is the end goal? When does the end come?
Right.
Because this is tragic. I would be devastated if something like this happened. It did happen to
Right.
some extent in our own back door when there was mass shooting at I can't think of the school right now, but
Yeah, down in Georgia, the recent one.
no, a couple of years ago it was all the kindergarten. It was like 30.
Connecticut and
Yes.
Oh,
Sandy
Sandy
Hook.
Hook.
Sandy Hook.
Oh,
Yeah, and so it's almost like this is awful. This is
Right.
devastating. I would never want this to happen in my own backyard.
Right.
But where is the end? What is the
Correct.
end goal for them? And why the children? I mean, obviously, I know there's more invested when
Yeah.
children are involved. But this is just awful.
Absolutely agree. And
I'm at a loss for words, honestly, when
Yeah.
it comes to kids, and
Right.
you know,
Right.
I'm thinking with my mom hat, and I would never want anyone to be put in this sort of position or predicament, or expose my children to something like this.
yeah, and again, my trip is meant to expose and share story and to go over and hear a different story than what maybe the media we have as putting out there. The different medias, I don't watch them. I talk to Marco, and I have people on the ground sending back intelligence, and I want to hear from people on the ground so I can take the story from them. We just talked about this offline again, like how do we get the story off of us, people talking about it, exposing it, so I can also share it.
Yeah. So this was in May.
Yep, that was a
This
May
was
trip.
in May. This
Yep.
is still happening
Yeah,
today, September.
Absolutely. I get the alerts when same areas. I see Kiryat Shimona, the different areas I was in getting bombed daily. Like I still get the alerts, and it shows me where they're hitting, where the Iron Dome is going up and getting, where the alerts are going off. I'm getting the same alerts that I had when I was over there because I want to know. I want to know how to pray. I want to know how to tell Marco, that looked like it was close to home. How you guys doing? Like I want to be able to do that because he's living at war. He has 2 children in war, by the way. He has a daughter who's currently active in the IDF and intelligence, and a son who's in the security forces and security elements. So Marco has 2 children at war right now, and he's raising a 12-year-old. So again, it's close to home, you know. So the next one would be a map point again. I wanted to show you we traveled all the way from the north in that triangle of the Golan Heights to now we're in the what's called a Gaza Overwatch, because you see the Gaza Strip is everything in that dotted line. Rafah being where most people would hear that the 4 battalions of Hamas are, which they're currently continuing to go through that area. Khan Yunis, they continue to war against them to try to get rid of Hamas. And we could hear their artillery going in. I can't say that word; it's so difficult.
Artillery.
It's a hard one for me. I don't know why. Well, it's going off constantly. There's fighting still going on in Gaza, and we could hear it while we were there. And Marco gave us the intelligence of on that day, October 7th in the morning, I believe about 6:30 a.m., 60 trigger points along that very long fence of the Gaza Strip. Hamas had come through and had went over the fence, had went through the fence and had cut it. And they had intelligence that they were going into the local kibbutzes. All those areas that you see have names. A kibbutz is a communal living area for Israelis where they do life together in kind of like a secure gated community so as to keep each other secure, especially along the area where the Gaza Strip is so active and there was a separation between them. Marco also said a lot of these kibbutzes, which did get infiltrated by Hamas on that day, were more liberal people of all of Israel, meaning when Palestinians would come through the different checkpoints daily, they would go to work in these local kibbutzes. So they were the most democratic and liberal of most Israelis, kind of supporting Palestinians with money and work. Mm-hmm. And they're the exact ones on that day that got attacked. And a lot of the intelligence, they knew right where to go, the names of the people in that area, because a lot of the workers who went into those kibbutzes went back and passed it to Hamas. So this day was planned. And a lot of intelligence that was pulled off of a lot of the dead terrorists proved that. And this is stuff that you don't really hear unless you're getting the intelligence of it.
Yeah, yeah.
They were meant to go into kibbutzes. They were meant to murder. They were meant to murder civilians. They were meant to rape. They were meant to kill, behead, dash to pieces children. And they were meant to take hostages back to Gaza in that time frame. Wow. And that's the intelligence. And it was pretty hard to hear, but true. What's the next one? The Nova Festival, I think.
Yeah, I think I remember this.
Yeah, so this is the Nova Festival. This was so this is me showing it's kind of halfway down of the Gaza Strip. It's to prove how close you can see the fence.
So the dot is where the Nova
Yes,
Festival
exactly.
happened.
That's right
Okay.
where the Nova Festival happened. So they knew, and the intelligence was, a certain unit of Hamas was going to cut the fence, come over, and they were all shooting to what they already knew was thousands of people at a music festival that were singing, dancing, enjoying life. They knew what was happening. They knew right where to go because they were cutting off roads and cutting off, they were providing checkpoints, if you will, to then do what they did during that day at the Nova Festival. And now you're going to see a video of Marco explaining exactly what I just told you.
Is it a picture? Because it doesn't seem to
it looks
play.
like a picture.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the picture. Yeah, that's just the
This
map.
is the map of it that he explained what I just told you, and he wanted to show how close the fence was. The next one might be the video.
All right, give me 1 second.
Which I just wanted to show everyone the faces. And this is the many faces that were either murdered or taken hostage. All of those faces. There's so many. I had to take a picture of the whole board.
Wow.
That there was so many.
There you go. There's the video.
And so there's all the faces of those murdered. Beautiful, handsome, young at a music festival.
Those are all confirmed murders.
Either hostages. These ones I believe were all murdered, but then there were hostage photos as well. All confirmed, absolutely.
All confirmed.
You'll see the families and people memorializing it by putting down plants and pictures and prayers and candles.
And since you mentioned the plants, I know, again, we discussed this off camera, but what is the symbolism behind the flowers and the plants and the trees that are being planted there?
Yeah, so a lot of the vegetation in that area there were bullet holes and was devastating. You could see a lot of the bullets and the explosions, and blood was everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
That each person that was killed, they're planting a tree in that person's name to provide new life, and you can donate to that cause, which I know they were doing. So this, for example, this man, I don't know his name, there would be a tree planted in his name there will be new life planted in Israel with the death of this man. It's a memorial. I saw soldiers there. They're meant to remember, never to forget. And that's why they do this. They want you to see
show
this.
their resiliency definitely mimics a lot of ours. You know, that's something that we would do to show that life continues on, that they will never be forgotten.
You're right.
But we need to be resilient and we need to rebuild and move along.
That's right. America and Israel are very closely aligned in politics and everything. And they are very much similar to us on the ground. When I spoke to them, who they are, how they look at life, who their enemies are. ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Taliban. We fought these in Iraq and Afghanistan. Houthi, Hamas, Hezbollah, very similar enemy. And that's how I connected with them and related.
Wow.
Just beautiful photos.
I can just keep scrolling if you want me to just...
Yeah, then it eventually gets, to a video which kind of rolls us through it all. Just beautiful. It was heavy. This was heavy to me, V, as I went through and saw faces.
They're young, beautiful people.
Correct. That
innocent.
was heavy.
They're all innocent. They were there to have a good time.
That's right.
They were there to enjoy life.
No soldiers, no guns. Yeah.
And community and then this happened. This tragic incident occurred.
Yeah.
Or attack. It's not an incident. It's an attack.
It was an attack. Right. And the next one you saw was a. So let this one play. This is a. Just 39 seconds, but this is every single vehicle that the civilians at the festival had. There were thousands here.
Now, I don't
Thousands.
remember seeing this the last time. So this is where we
this is
last
new.
cut off.
It
yeah.
cut off.
Oh,
This
wow.
is thousands of vehicles. And as I these are all burnt in the background. So Hamas knew they were going in and they were going to burn up a lot of their vehicles to keep them in place. Look at them all burnt. Like this is all cars, vehicles, trucks, everything. The ones that were on the other side, as you walk down, there was bullet holes. on a lot of the vehicles. They would spray the cars. There was if you think you have thousands of people at a festival, you have a lot of parked cars, and they were in fields. And Hamas was going through spraying vehicles as people were trying to get away, or the ones that were parked, they were taking them out so they couldn't drive. So tires, engine blocks, everything. This is one of their gun trucks. And in Iraq and Afghanistan, we saw this in the Hiluxes of a lot of the gun trucks that Iraqis would drive around that were our enemy, or even the local security
I was
forces.
say Iraqi
That's
police would patrol in
You're
the
right.
pickups for us. Yeah,
And that's
yeah.
the same thing.
Yeah, and they would
It's
all
the
be
same
piled
thing.
up in the back of the pickup. Yeah.
That's what they came through the fences on that day. They would blow the holes open, cut the fences, drive through with their Hilux type trucks, with their gun setups. As you can see, the turret with whatever gun they're going to put on the back there, RPK, PKM, AK-47, whatever the gun was. It was very similar. Walking through that graveyard.
Was it
brought me
re-triggering
back.
for you?
It was heavy. I was processing, I think, Iraq and Afghanistan while I was there. A sadness, not hypervigilance and triggering, more that it was a process through remembering. I looked at it, I go, Marco, these are the same gun trucks I saw in those war zones, both war zones.
Yeah.
And he
I
shook
mean,
his head.
we've also been fortunate to be able to degress and decipher our previous experiences to know that these two are not one and the
That's right.
same. And so you're no longer responding with that fight or flight, but you're
Yep.
in the moment just processing it all.
And was deeply, when you had asked, were you heavy or could you feel the heaviness coming off the plane? Not yet. Now I'm feeling heaviness. I felt it at all the different sites that Marco brought us where the story, you're meant to, when you hear a sad story, aren't you meant to take on that story from I don't want to shut it off, dissociate, and not feel it. At this point in my life, because of my testimony, I can't help but feel everything. There was a time I said to my therapist, can I just shut it off? I don't want to feel everything. She goes, yeah, you were addicted, you were numb, you were closed. Do you really want to go back to that? I go, no, I'll feel. So it was me being heavy and feeling this whole thing.
Yeah.
And so the next few photos are some of the same. Another gun truck up close. Again, bullet holes riddled through a regular van that a civilian had driven in. The windows are shot out, bullet holes on the sides of the doors, on the hoods, in the glass. You can see they're accurately shooting out engine blocks and going for people because look at the windows as people are inside. And I just wanted this is just the line of cars, and there were 3 or 4 different lanes of this. And so this is the hostage. This is Rome, one of the 101 who is still there. Just interesting as I continue to see videos that intelligence sends back. The six hostages were just murdered in Hamas hands as Israel was getting close. IDF was getting through the tunnels. They executed them. I saw the 6 photos and was looking for a photo of Rome to see if he was one of them. He wasn't. Doesn't feel any. It feels good that he's still alive because here's where we met his mom. We met his mom. Oh, wow. We met his older brother, and we met his aunt. And his mom shared what it's like to be the mom of a hostage. Wow. And her heart was bleeding, and it was sad. And you can't fix this because a terrorist organization came in and stole your son from the Nova Festival. And every day you wake up, you don't know if he's alive or dead. And as of right now, there are people who know their hostages are dead. They know that a third of the hostages in captivity are dead. We don't know if Rome is alive or dead. And to hear from the mouth of a mom and the brother sitting there going, I'm the older brother. I want everything to protect my brother, and I can't do it. The 12-year-old brother who shared a room with Rome is struggling mentally and couldn't even be there. Shared a room with him, you know? So it really hits close to home when you look at the families who are telling the stories. And Rome was one of those stories. And so I have that photo in my room, and we pray every day for what's happening over there, for all innocent people that are being exposed to the atrocities, that are being held as human shields, that are being used for whatever agenda, and for those held in captivity, and the soldiers that are fighting the righteous war. And so that's a picture of Rome. This is the Western Wall. Now I'm going to take you into Jerusalem, where we met with the commander of the Western Wall. He's the deputy superintendent. And he talks about having the 3 major religions in his area. Within the walls of Jerusalem, there are 55,000 people in a small area, the holy city, with three great religions. Of Catholicism is where the site is, but Christianity, Catholicism specifically, Islam, and Judaism. The three great religions of the world come together to this one spot where there's a mosque on one side of this wall and the old temple of King David, King Solomon, western wall, all that's left, where they're all worshiping, one on one side, one on the other. Wow. How close. And that truly, it is a holy war that goes back thousands of years. And this superintendent said, I just want all the major religions to worship peacefully and in a holy way, because I don't want war from my soldiers who he's doing life with, but that's just not the way it is. And that seemed to be a sentiment, was that he wanted peace, but there has never been peace. And they've been in their homeland for 76 years. This is the most sensitive site on earth because of what I just said, the most holy site for Judaism, third holiest site for Islam, besides Mecca, Medina, which is in Saudi Arabia. This is their third most holy mosque. And Catholicism's most holy site, where they believe the tomb of Jesus is very a short distance away. So to meet with him and hear his heart was, again, history lesson and just amazingly just an eye-opening session. What do we have next?
Is that like a
top of the Western Wall? You're looking at Al-Aqsa Mosque. Al-Aqsa Mosque. I'm having trouble with my words today, but this is the third holiest site in all of Islam, and it's the mosque on Jerusalem's Temple Mount, where they believe the temple of King David and the temple of King Solomon, where they believe God would, the Holy of Holies, which is a tabernacle where God would truly be, and Islam has put a mosque on top of it. We can see the battles that can ensue with a holy war. I believe the Dome of the Rock is behind us now, another holy site, and then something called the Mount of Olives off in the distance. In Christianity, it's where Jesus Christ is meant to come back in Revelation. So as a group, we just took a photo of that. We're on the top of the wall where the Border Patrol allowed us to go as civilians, looking at all three sites, looking at the three religions. There were people worshiping down below at the Western Wall. There were people walking on the other side, the Muslim side, and Christians and Catholics and the Catholic side. To be there was so humbling, and just realizing how sensitive holy wars actually are, and just how small this area is. Just absolutely amazing. And the commander, the gentleman I told you that we went to see, when he became commander, he opened up his wall to remember there's a Western Wall here, to just show him how sensitive of a site it was. He was the first one to open up the wall to feel like this is thousands of years old, this temple, this wall, and he wanted to remember how sensitive this site is, to motivate him and his men. Just remember where you are, how far back this goes, and what we every day have come to work to protect, but these people too. And they do both sides. They protect Jews and Muslims alike, and Christians. Their job is for the protection of all of it. So just amazing to just see that, and I took a photo of that. Tent of Heroism is every IDF soldier that had been killed to date since the war, a majority on October 7th and 8th. Here's where I met multiple fathers who told the story of their sons dying on that day. This was the most emotional for me. And just when I couldn't think, hearing the heart of a mother who had a son in captivity, for me, when one of the dads was sharing the story of his son, who was a tank commander, and they knew they were going in against 300 Hamas terrorists into a kibbutz, and the women were being raped. They were getting the intelligence passing back that, civilians are dying against 300. These 12 went in to fight, kind of on a suicide mission. One survived critically. That's why the story was told. And the father who was telling the story was there, and he said, as I'm very heavy, once again, hearing another one of these stories, and there's his family right there coming up, and there's his widow with an 8-month-old son that will never know his father. And I broke down. I just lost it, and I'd never seen the fallen family. I'd always seen the fallen, and that's hard enough. But to see the surviving and remaining family, to see that 8-month-old rip my heart out,
Yeah.
as it's meant to. And he was holding his 8-month-old grandson on his lap, and his grandson's holding the picture of his father. And I was just crying. More healing. I never processed, that families. I know it's a
That
thing.
family aspect. It's almost as if you put yourself in the
Yeah.
role of that soldier, that father who passed away, and you're looking in from the outside of what could have been, what
Absolutely.
we us veterans or service members risk.
Every single
These
day.
are the risks. That 8-month-old does not have a father, will never get to know what
right.
his actual father was like because of this war, because of this religious
Absolutely.
war.
It hit a couple of us that way.
Yeah.
Like there was a woman also to see that child without a father. I watched her walk away and she was crying.
Yeah.
I just cried right there as this grandfather was telling the story of his son and holding that soldier's son. I just knew it was that I couldn't hold it in anymore. I wasn't meant to. We'd been holding it in for how long? Behind the walls. To hold it in,
It's what's
to battle,
expected of
to
us.
grind. Yeah.
It's what's expected of us. And so, to circle back on the meaning of this whole podcast is just showing the human side of us and how we sometimes do break down because, we are human and it is okay to process. It is
That's right.
okay to break down. It is okay. Nothing happened. Nothing happened, right?
That's
You
right.
broke down in front of the family. What happened to you? Nothing. You
I
were
healed
able to
more.
heal.
I healed more.
Yeah.
I didn't have a helmet on my head. I didn't have a gun on my hip. I didn't have a bullet bouncer on. I wasn't at war. And none of that stuff would have made me safe hearing the hearts of these people and the stories of what they've gone through since October 7th. As I share this with veterans, they're shocked. I'm back in a war zone. But as you can hear now the stories and I guide you through it, that wasn't my time or place or anything for me to be a war guy. I was hearing the hearts of people on the ground, most of them not military, most of them civilians, and how they have to go through war. And if for some reason or way I got through the Gaza Strip and was able to hear the stories of Palestinian families on the ground who've been affected by the war as well, that would have opened up more of an opportunity and story. But that wasn't the opportunity I had. I was hearing it from an Israeli perspective, wanted to make clear to the Israelis I spoke to that I fought similar enemies in Iraq and Afghanistan, and that I support you against the common enemies that we have. I don't support Hamas. I don't support Hezbollah. I don't support Houthi. I don't support terrorism where they blow up, hold human shields. Al-Qaeda did the same thing in marketplaces in Iraq to prove that they owned that place and that America and the local security force couldn't keep them safe. They blew up car bombs, killing 50, 100 innocent men, women, and children, claiming responsibility to say, you see, America will not keep you safe. The new government they're trying to put in won't do it. So they killed innocent people to prove a point. We fought the same enemy. That's just what they do. We've never seen on this scale, though, the rape, pillage, hostage taken, and beheadings and murder of children, everybody, that they did on October 7th. They took it to a new level and another game, if you will, another level up. So that's what I recognized as well. And this is the father talking about his son. There he is.
The grandfather, you mean?
Yes, he is
grandfather.
a father talking about his son who is an IDF soldier.
Yeah.
He told us the story privately behind this tent. Then more civilians and family members came, and I watched him from a distance tell it again in Hebrew. They speak Hebrew there. They're Jewish, so they speak Hebrew. And I just took a photo of that as well. I believe this is our last slide, and I highlighted this slide because something happened where on my second to last night, it was nighttime. So picture this at night. And how did David do as a former war guy in a war zone? I did hear, explosions down south near Gaza. We had to download an app on our phone, which alerts us to incoming rounds, missiles, drones, everything like that. Here I am back in the Golan Heights in that triangle. So if you can remember the map, it was Lebanon's on the water to the west, and then Syria is a huge country north and east. And my phone started going off, and it happened multiple times, but this night it really started going off. And then the surrounding kibbutz where I live, I'm living with a Russian Jewish man right now at a kibbutz, which again it's a community where they know each other. They keep safe together. And sirens start going off in the community. And my heart started to race. I started to sweat, and I was being triggered. And I noticed it was back to the green zone in Iraq, where the ARAM sirens in that green zone would alert you to the incoming mortar rounds, RPGs, and whatever was being fired at you. It was a very similar sound. And it was happening again, and I could tell it was happening again. And I then looked up into the night sky, and I watched 5 streaks go up into the night sky, and it was the Iron Dome. And the Iron Dome is a defense system that America has helped instill in Israel, and they've perfected it, where whenever anything comes, it goes up to take out the drone or the rocket or the missile, anything coming. And I didn't know that until I saw the lit explosions in the air. They did go up and get something. Something was coming. Something was close. And I know that when the alerts go off, I have 10 to 15 seconds to get to cover, to get to a bomb shelter. I just didn't have the time. And I was very fearful, and I was very anxious. And again, my spirituality, where I am, I heard and felt something inside say, just talk to me about this. Get this out. Don't hold on to it. Don't go back to that place. And I did. Had a little conversation. And I felt peace. And whatever fear and anxiousness I had went away as I'm watching explosions in the air that were coming towards the area I was in. And so David was back in a war zone with no guns, with no bullet bouncers, with no protection, not even a bomb shelter within the time frame I was meant to get to on my phone, and the sirens alerting me. And the Iron Dome went up and got it, and I was able to have a conversation with my Lord and Savior in that moment, because that's the voice that I heard. And I felt a peace that surpasses all understanding in a war zone, in a combat situation with missiles and drones coming at me. And every veteran can have that. I'm not telling you to go to a war zone. I'm saying you have a war zone in your head. I'm saying you have a war zone in your whatever addiction. If you're hiding, you're isolating, you're in the dark, you have a war happening, and it's a storm, and we're being triggered, and chemically it's inside of our body, and we're hiding, and we're fearful, and we have high heart rate, and we're sweating, we're anxious, all of this stuff. And how are we getting it out? I had a conversation with my Savior, because it's spiritual now, and this peace just, it doesn't make sense, right? With missiles and drones in a war zone, how can you have peace? And it's carried over. I've had the same peace since that time to this time now, to the time frame moving forward, because I'm sticking to it. And I said that at a Veterans of War retreat, and I'm looking at the veterans as I'm talking to them, and a few of them pulled me and goes, "You were just in a war zone?" They can't fathom after Iraq and
I'm
Afghanistan.
not gonna lie, I can't either. I'm serious. I'm just being honest. I'm not sure that I would have had the same responses that you did. I feel as if the old me would be re-triggered, and I would just go into fight or flight.
Yeah.
I really would.
It came. I felt it.
Yeah.
It was coming. Like, I didn't know what was going to happen. I have memories of being in Iraq as the incoming just hit a block or two away, and I knew it was still coming. I remember being in fetal position in Iraq during incoming, thinking the next one was going to hit me, fight or flight. I was flighting, snapped out of it, and knew I had to fight and flee to a position to get back. I can't sit here laying down. I felt that happening in Israel during that moment. I had nowhere to go.
I can see myself being hypervigilant the
Yeah.
entire time, not trusting anyone, just looking over my shoulder. I can see myself doing that as opposed to what you were doing, where you were actually engaging and listening.
Yep.
I'm sorry, I don't think I could have.
How many veterans are doing what you just said, walking around the city right now? And it's not a war, but they're in some type of war, feeling what we're talking about. They're triggered. It feels as if they're in Iraq or Afghanistan, or they're stuck in the trauma. They're doing the same exact thing we're talking about right now.
Yeah.
And they don't know it. And I'm literally telling veterans, you're able to do this if you're coping and healing in community. I was with a community. Every day we left those heavy stories, we got together and brainstormed and talked about it. We didn't flip a switch and go to the next mission. We didn't just check a box and face value talk about an after action. What can we do different? No, we literally talked about what just happened, how heavy it was, how sad it was, and tomorrow's going to be harder. And we can do this together. That was the point of this group. And it just healed me and showed me there's different ways to do life. And I really enjoyed this way of doing life, even in a war zone.
Angus, go ahead and bring our cameras big because we're done with the slides. And Dave, so I do have a question for you as far as calls to action.
Yeah.
Hearing this amazing story, what is the call to action for our listeners?
Yeah, this is a good one because this issue and this war and what's happening is so sensitive. It's like we have forgotten many things in the world. We've actually forgot there's a war in Russia and Ukraine.
Right.
This country the size of New Jersey, this holy war, has taken a precedent into the world and has gone to so many places, has become political, that I wanted to get on the ground, and I'm not saying a veteran has to get on the ground, to go out and do the work and hear it myself. That's just how I'm made, man. I was created to go into difficult places and serve. As you both know, I help rehome women out of trafficking, exploitation, and prostitution in this area. Multiple retreat centers. We're guiding veterans through very difficult memories because that's where I went to heal. I have such a servant heart to help and hear the hearts of people because I know it helps because it was the road I took. Don't get so politically and chemically induced by what the media shows you, by what politics are. Can we just sit around a table and have a conversation and hear each other's hearts and then process it together and have a conversation? If that just happened, could there be peace? I don't know. The holy war seems to, and what's happening, it doesn't seem there can be. But how about us as just, veterans here in America or just family members or friends? Can't we just have a conversation and come to the table and just be able to talk about it, and I'm not trying to push my agenda on V pushing on Andrew. Let's just have a conversation and educate each other about what it is. I would love to get into Gaza and also hear the hearts of Palestinians and what's happening too. I just didn't have that access. I wish everyone could come to the table and just have relationship.
Conversation is hard. Conversation is very hard for all of us because it almost feels as if we're trying to push one agenda or the other, and we do need to start having conversations again. We just need to just talk to one another. You're not trying to push your agenda on me.
Right.
You're not trying to get me to just see one side or the other. You're trying to get us to see both sides and what the reality of this really is, right? What it means for the Palestinian people, what it means for the Israeli people. Yes, it is a holy war, but there are people still invested in this. There are still people involved and being hurt over this entire unfortunate position we find ourselves in. And conversation is okay just to discuss it so that we're not putting it in the back burner. We're not overlooking one side or the other.
Yeah.
We're giving it a voice. We're giving it a platform just by having conversations.
Right.
And so, we need to bring it back to the table.
That's
How
right.
often does it seem like that's what conversations are these days? Is like someone trying to prove someone else wrong.
Yeah, you said that, and that seems to be
It's the
conversations.
political culture that we're in right now, right?
Yeah.
There's a huge divide between America and itself. So where does America sit in this whole conversation if America can't even come together?
That's right. And that's what Marco invited us there for. He invited Christians, 8 of us, to Israel around a table. It was always around something and we just had conversations and heard each other's hearts. And he just wanted, and a lot of the people in Israel said, our 9/11 happened on October 7th. How do we feel so alone? How did we become the genocidal maniacs? How did we become the murderers? They have our hostages. Your 9/11 happened. You went into 2 countries. We don't understand how we've lost the PR war, the media war. Your colleges, your universities, people are pulling funding. We don't understand. They're shocked that no one wants to have a conversation. Marco invited people to have a conversation. He wants to invite more. So coming around a table is Marco's point. We just want more friends and more people to have conversations and expose it all. And people just can't have conversation. It just feels so defensive right now. Everyone's just trying to push something down each other's throats, and that's not what we're doing here. We're saying come around a table, have a conversation. It comes back to veterans of war not taking their lives and hurting themselves. Come around a table, have a conversation. It's when you isolate and you stop talking and you do become defensive and you can't hear the other person, it gets really dangerous and it starts wars. And so that was the point of this podcast, for me to share my trip.
Awesome.
Come around the table and have a conversation with us.
Yeah, no, I appreciate your vulnerability as well.
Thank you.
I think it really showed a different side of us.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah. And, a part of the podcast, that, Dave talked about from the beginning was for the community at large, but of course, veterans to hear the language of how Dave expresses himself and processes in real time.
Yeah.
There's a lot of education in that, even for someone that's a civilian, to learn how you process in the language you use. Even civilians just bury their thoughts, feelings, and emotions. So, yeah, Dave, thank you very much, man.
Very welcome.
Appreciate
Thank
that.
you for hearing me. And this was meant to be a 2-part episode because of how long it could be.
Yeah.
We did it all in one, and that's great.
Well,
Take 2 was pretty
technically-
awesome.
Yeah, technically 2 parts still, but
Yeah.
consolidated into one.
Right.
Yeah.
And this time they let us go with it.
Yeah.
So thank you for listening, and everybody.
If anyone wants to hear more from Dave, email us at bridgingthegapvetspodcast@gmail.com. Dave would be happy to start a conversation, right?
will.
Continue the
Absolutely.
conversation.
On either side.
Yes.
On either
That's
side.
right.
On either side.
Yep. Well, thank you all so much. Amazing episode of Bridging the Gap, and we look forward to next month. Thank
See
you.
you guys later.